Last August, I had a serious run-in with an old oil and gas journalist from Alberta who had been instrumental in a University of Alberta course on the energy transition. And somebody had sent me a link to it. It's a couple of years old. And I went and I downloaded the transcript and read it and watched some of the video. And I basically wrote a column that said it was awful, absolutely awful, and that the person who had done most of the development work and hosted it wasn't qualified. And really, you can read the column. It's on August 20th, 2024. It's on our website, energi.media. And I made I was a little annoyed about it, but I made an evidence-based argument for why it was as awful as I said it was. Well, this, senior oil and gas journalist blew his stack. Went on LinkedIn, said all sorts of nasty things about me, and also tagged one of the foundations that provides funding. And, it's no secret. We get funding, partial funding for a couple of foundations. And the foundation, because they've been publicly tagged, took it seriously. And so they sent one of their staff members to take the course. And it's quite long. It's about 12 hours of video, and then there's some tests and so on. And then that staff member reported back to the board. And as I was told the story, then the board all laughed because it turned out that I was correct. And it was very poorly done. And it had a very one-sided oil and gas centric view. And really ignored a lot of the energy transition and peak oil demand and electrification, both supply and demand that's being driven by China, on and on and on. So today, that same journalist wrote a column and landed in my inbox, and it was all about how Canadians are energy illiterates and our politicians are energy illiterates. And if they just knew more, if they would just educate themselves, they would realize how Alberta demands are so reasonable and Alberta should be given everything that it wants. And this is a theme I hear over and over and again, have done for years. And I just get tired of it. And so I posted it on Facebook, and I wrote it was a pretty harsh 3-paragraph comment about it. And who should come on my thread but Brett Wilson, the infamous oilman from Calgary and former Dragon's Den cast member on CBC and so on. And he upbraided me for why don't I just stick to the facts instead of taking shots at people. Seriously, if you know Brett Wilson at all, he's the guy that in 2018 called for foreign-funded activists to be hanged for treason. Hanged. And then when he was harshly criticized for it publicly, stood by his comments. Put out another tweet saying that. And that's not the least of it. He and I have tangled many times over the last 10, 12 years. But here's the point I want to get at, is that the Alberta oil industry and their supporters think that those of us who disagree with them about the trajectory of oil and gas demand, about the pace of the energy transition, if there even is one, that we don't know, that we're somehow illiterate and uneducated. And in fact, the exact opposite is true. I've made this argument and enraged some people on, energy professionals on LinkedIn, for example. But I've made the argument that being an oil and gas engineer, for example, somebody who knows the oil and gas system up inside and out, does not make them an expert on the energy transition, because it's an entirely different source of energy. In fact, energy has now become a technology. It's become electricity generated by wind and solar, and then other renewable forms like hydro and nuclear and geothermal. And then on the demand side, things like batteries and electric vehicles and heat pumps and electrolyzers to make hydrogen. What's going on at the global level, the oil and gas bros in Alberta haven't got a clue. And so when they're contradicted, they come back with the, you just don't know, you're illiterate, you don't know anything about energy, I'm an oil and gas engineer, what I say is correct, or I'm an oil and gas journalist, and, baloney. This is the problem. There is not space for a conversation, and there should be. You have no idea how many times I talk to oil and gas professionals in Alberta who say, I don't agree with the government. I don't agree with my industry a lot of times on issues, especially around the environment and climate, but I can't speak up. If I speak up, I'll lose my job. Or maybe I'll keep my job, but I won't have any career advancement. I mean, how would I, if I lost my job, how would I pay the mortgage? How would I put food on the table for my kids? So they keep their head down and they go along to get along. And you can't blame them. So all of this nonsense that comes out of Alberta, but we want to have a conversation, we just want to talk. No, they want you to listen. They will talk and you will listen. That's what they want. And then you'll agree with them. And if you don't agree with them, then they get upset and they get angry. And all you have to do, I don't know how many times I've had people from Eastern Canada email me and go, why are Albertans so angry? It's because they're not getting what they want. They're frustrated. I've made this argument before. All you have to do is look at the oil production statistics. The USA is far and away number one. Russia and Saudi Arabia are tied for 2 and 3. And who's in fourth? Kind of a distant fourth? Canada, basically Alberta. And they have the oil in the ground, 170 billion barrels up in the oil sands. They have the expertise to do it pretty cheaply. They're kind of, low to middle, basically middle of the road, middle cost producers. But they could be so much more. They could be Russia. They could be Saudi Arabia with the wealth and the political clout that comes along with it. And they see British Columbia and Quebec and Ontario holding them back. And they're angry about that. They want the industry to realize its full potential. And I'm quoting oil and gas CEOs from a March 19th letter to the Canadian political leaders. That's what they want, and they can't have it. They can't get a pipeline, and they're angry about it. And that anger, you see it in Brett Wilson, you see it in this oil and gas journalist, you see it over and over and over again, that frustration. Well, something's got to change because we need to have a conversation, a rational, evidence-based conversation, and that is not happening so far.